Welcome to another Manor Lord's Guide. In this video, I'll be showcasing two food production layouts which will easily set you up for success. Both of these combos will include 3 food types that will cover your food supply and variety demands all the way up to the max settlement level and beyond. These layouts require only 1 or 2 development points, and neither of these rely on more than just one common regional food deposit. They are both very similar, but it provides options based on which regional resources you have access to. So this will make it easy for you to apply either of these layouts for yourself. Both of the setups that I'll present here are very practical and easy to manage. And either one of these can easily support a population of several hundred people without even having any other additional food sources. I'll break down all the necessary information not just for setting these up, but also for continuing to run the setups from there. Since the two layouts are very similar, the overview of the first one will include most of the information that will apply to the second one as well. But then we'll review the unique parts to adjust. I put in a good amount of effort planning these out to present to you in a way that I hope will be useful to you, so let's get into it, starting with the first layout. Alright, so this is the very easy setup here. As the name implies, using this setup will make your life easy. Not only does it only cost 1 development point, but it's also low maintenance and convenient. The 3 food types to cover all your residential requirements here are veggies, apples, and a rich berry deposit. So all you need within your region for this layout is the rich berry deposit, and then we'll build the setup around that. So wherever the berry deposit is located, I like to start by laying out some roads which will determine where the key parts will go. We'll begin with the steps of creating a layout like this and then dive into why and how it works. First and foremost, determine where exactly the berry bushes are and make sure to section off this area. You do not want to build anything here because if you take out any of the nearby trees, it could destroy the berry bushes and they cannot be moved or replanted. So right next to this berry deposit is where we'll set up the rest of our food production and keep everything in close proximity. You want to have a space for the forager hut and a granary right next to the deposit. Also set out a marketplace section right next to that. If possible, having a water well right around here is also ideal. So now we've created a localized area for drop-off and market stocking with the berries. This is the crucial heart of the setup which makes it possible to supply so much food from a relatively small area and workforce. And the remainder of the setup will be added on right next to this. This will be the veggie and orchard backyard extensions. So here's where the rest of the road layout that expands outward from this central area comes into play. We'll section off 4 housing areas with large backyard extensions that are about 1 to 2 morgen in size. I typically try to make them roughly around 1.5 morgen. These can be a bit bigger or smaller based on your preferences or experience. So you can use the roads to shape the borders of these housing areas. The technique here is to make sure that there's a space just big enough for a double housing area in the front, but then expand it out towards the back. There's a variety of shapes or methods that you could use here, but I find that making them like this works well. Almost like slices of pizza. It's most important to make sure that it's a double housing area because you'll want the max amount of families living here so they can harvest all of the food. Then use the crop field placement tool to measure the backyard size and adjust the outline as needed. So we're going to lay out 4 of these. 2 will be for veggies and 2 will be for apple orchards. For a better perspective, here's an overview of how this layout looks from above. Feel free to copy this or make your own layout using this information. You can see how efficient this central area is going to be with the main granary and marketplace at the heart of all this production. So this is the majority of the initial setup, but now I'll get into more of how to operate everything from here and how to integrate the rest of your town as well. We'll start with the one development point that comes into play for this layout. Due to the way the berry deposits replenish their supplies, this development point has been widely proven as a very weak option which does very little for you. This means that we just need to spend 1 point for the orchards. I highly recommend grabbing this on your first development point and getting the orchards placed into 2 of these backyard extensions as soon as possible. Ideally before September of the first year if you can. This will get the process of the apple trees maturing started right away and you'll be able to harvest full amounts quicker. The orchards also will not impact your labor pool nearly as much as the veggies will, so placing these early on while your town is still smaller is good. Just making a couple easy sales of something simple like planks early on will get you enough coin for this. Even with the lower harvest amounts from the orchards before they fully grow, this will still help supply that second food variety for your town until it expands significantly. So then as your town expands, place the veggie gardens in the other 2 backyard extensions when you have the labor available. These will need to be worked frequently throughout the entire year, so I just keep these families available for the veggies full time. Once again, there's a few different approaches here, but I like to just assign these families who live on the veggie plots to the church or corpse pits. This essentially puts them on a task that has nothing to do, so they will only focus on working their veggie farm. It also takes them off the available labor pool, which is convenient when assigning other jobs in general. Once these veggies start coming in, your food production will really start scaling up. You should easily have all 3 food types supplied for your town by year 3, and then the production levels will continue to increase from there. Now let's take a look at how all of this will operate throughout the seasons. So starting from the beginning of each year, you'll focus on gathering berries heavily during the spring. During this time, assign extra families to the forager hut that's right next to the berry deposit. Assigning 3 or 4 should be good to maximize the harvest amounts with this layout. This is because during the spring, the berry deposits will continuously regenerate their supplies, so you can just keep gathering as much as possible while it refills itself. Keep in mind that after spring, it will stop regenerating, so you can drop down to just 1 or 2 families to harvest the rest before winter. So this is an ideal task to assign to your families that live on the orchard plots because they can only harvest apples during September. So your orchard families alone can essentially cover 2 of the 3 food sources here. And they will still be available for other jobs for the rest of the time in the summer or winter, for example. But making sure that they are all free from other jobs and ready to focus on harvesting apples during September specifically is crucial. Similar to the veggie workers, you can assign them as grave diggers just before September to make sure that they are ready to focus only on their orchards. Remember, our veggie plot families are just assigned as grave diggers, so they are just farming their plots year-round. So the families that live in these 4 houses with the backyard extensions will do literally all of the food production work for the entire town. This is where we have the combination of efficiency and convenience with this setup. The last main thing to keep up with here is making sure that you gradually assign more families to work at the central granary as your town grows. This is key for keeping your food production efficient and keeping up with the marketplace demand. With all this, by year 4 or 5, you'll easily be upgrading to level 3 houses with plenty of food supply for a large-sized town. Make sure to upgrade your veggie and orchard houses before any of the others because they'll need the extra families to move in to get the full harvest amounts. Now you of course need more in your town other than just food. So let's take a quick look at how you can integrate the rest of your town efficiently into this layout. I used this area off to the side to add the rest of the essential logistics buildings such as the church and the tavern. This way our families who live in the central food production area will not have to travel far if they go to pray or drink. Then we can start adding more houses and regular resource production areas over here. I won't go into much more about the details of the rest over here because in this video we're focused on the food production aspects. But I wanted to make sure to show how you can apply this to work with your entire town. So that's everything for the first layout. Hopefully you can see how everything works here with maximum efficiency in our central food area in particular. With the granary and market at the heart of all this massive food production here, it ensures that there will be no bottlenecks in the process of storing and distributing it, which could limit the potential output of everything. As I briefly showed earlier, this alone can scale up even past the max settlement level to a population of several hundred people very easily. Once the apple trees mature and the veggie farms set in, everything will produce incredible results. As things ramp up, you can also add a second granary in here to add more storage and market stalls. Now on to the second layout, the Pescatarian. Like I said earlier, the second setup is very similar to the first, but just with a variation on the resource deposit. As you can see, this one works with a rich fishing deposit instead of a rich berry deposit. So the setup and approach here will be almost exactly the same, except with a couple of tweaks. You'll still want to build your central food production and market area right next to the fishing deposit. Then add the 4 big backyard houses right around this, using the same technique from before. Here's another visual reference overview for this one. Basically the same structural layout from the first setup will work here as well, keeping our main food production, storage, and distribution all within close proximity to the central heart of the setup. Now one of the biggest differences here is that this combo requires spending a second development point. I still recommend going into the orchard point first and getting the trees planted as soon as possible. But you'll need to get the advanced pond keeping at some point in order to maximize this production. Unlike the useless development point for the berry bushes, the fishing point actually matters a lot. According to data from the Manor Lord's Discord and forums, there can be a difference in harvest amounts by upwards of 75 to 80% with the development point. I highly recommend checking out this article that provides detailed data on fishing amounts if you'd like to know more specifics. They'll be able to harvest more than enough fish for the early stages without the development point, but later down the line as your town grows, you'll definitely need it. But other than that, the long story short is that you'll want to approach this the same way as the berries. The fish will regenerate in supply during the spring, so you'll want to assign extra families during this time to maximize the harvest. Once again, this is a perfect assignment for your orchard families. If you really use the fishing pond to the max, it can yield more resources than a rich berry deposit. So even though it costs 2 development points, this combo can scale up a bit further in the long run. So hopefully these can help you out in some way. There are of course plenty of other options to harvest food or ways to lay it out as well. But I wanted to give you a detailed guide that shows how you can realistically set up a very successful infrastructure of food without making things too complex. Either of these layouts are more than good enough to easily set up a strong town through the max settlement level even on the challenging settings. It's a pretty decent likelihood to get either a rich berry or fishing deposit, so either of these options should be usable pretty frequently. A couple of last things to note here as we wrap up the video. You'll notice that neither of these combos included farming. I'm not advocating against it by any means, but it's a higher maintenance food production method, which we've avoided with these simpler layouts. The biggest advantage with farming is that you can also produce barley for ale. But with the way that the new patch has adjusted the taverns and ale distribution coming into 2025, it's no longer necessary to farm massive amounts of barley in order to keep up with residential demands as you upgrade houses to level 2 and 3. At this point, I find that it's easier to just steadily import a small amount of barley. Even just my signature charcoal trading setup will get you enough for everything that you need through the max settlement level and beyond, including barley, mercenaries, and more. Feel free to check out that setup here on my channel as well. I also did not include hunting in either of these layouts. Hunting is not really high maintenance compared to farming, but it's another completely different approach and setup in order to maximize it. I'll be making another food production video for advanced layouts, which will include more of these other options, so keep an eye out for that. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best with your towns. Let me know in the comments if you have any feedback or questions. Alright, hope to see you in the next video. Peace.